Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Steve, for the opportunity.
Having you here is important to me because I am very concerned about where we're at in our relations with First Nations peoples across Canada and where we're going to get to. You know, we can take a look at some of the court cases over the, let's say, even just the last 20 years, from the Silcoteen on down through to Delgamuukw, and we see that the legal relationship is changing, but the government relationship hasn't changed. And most importantly, on the ground, for people in First Nations communities, they are living in a world that is so far removed from this. From your perspective, where are we at? And what, with the change of government, do you hope will happen to move us to the place that we need to be?
Where are we at in Canada? When I look at Canada as a whole, as a great, beautiful country, I equate it this way. It's rated 6th in terms of the United Nations Human Development Index quality of life, 6th. You apply those same indices to Indigenous peoples, we're 63rd. So it's 6th versus 63rd in terms of quality of life.
Within the same country.
Within this same beautiful, rich country called Canada.
Yeah.
And so closing this gap that exists is the big challenge for us in Canada, because this gap, this 6th versus 63rd, it represents.
Because if we take a look at all the reasons why there is that gap, most of them are because of policies that have been imposed upon First Nations and have put First Nations people in a position where they do not have access to opportunity, resources, and so on. Their lives have been disturbed, shattered, destroyed in the process. How do we now then start to turn that around? How do we create trust amongst communities and then start to help people, especially the youth of tomorrow, be equipped with the tools that they need to realize their full potential?
It's colonization and oppression. You know, it's genocide.
Does that opportunity provide for being able to improve quality of life for First Nations? And then how do we go about making that happen so that it's happening in partnership rather than two?
That's a key word, is partnership, Stuart. That's how you do it. Before industry or federal, provincial governments try to build anything, build a relationship first. Build a really respectful, cooperative, collaborative relationship with First Nations peoples, First Nations governments. That's the first step. And include First Nations people every step of the way, from start to finish on any project. In the development and design and implementation, delivery of anything, that has to happen. So include First Nations people. That's step one.
Then all of a sudden, it's yours and it's not mine. Like, it's as though if you benefit and do well, I lose. And I don't hear that that's what you're saying.
No, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. Like when you start thinking about on an international perspective, and you start talking about global warming and climate change, we're all in this. We all breathe clean air. We need clean water to survive. What are we leaving our children and grandchildren? And the point I made at this conference here, people need to start thinking, both public sector and private sector, from an Indigenous worldview perspective. And what I mean by that, when we look at things, we don't see color. We're the two-legged tribe. But we'll always acknowledge our brothers and sisters, the four-legged ones, the animals, the ones that fly, the ones that swim, the ones that crawl. We'll acknowledge that. We'll acknowledge Mother Earth, Father Sky, Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun. We're all connected. So when you have that Indigenous perspective, you put that into your business planning model. You know, everybody, we're all in it together, so you can't be excluded. So that's what I say to people that, oh, they're going to win and we're going to lose. No. When this gap that I continue to talk about starts closing, this is good for Canada as a country. It's not only good for First Nations people. When we start getting up to the 6th in terms of quality of life, there's a high social cost to maintaining the status quo. And that's not acceptable.